Welcome back to Texas in Focus. My guest on the program today is Derrick Fox, the president and CEO of the Valero Alamo Bowl, which will take place 2 weeks from today. Derrick, thank you so much for joining the program today.
Matthew, thanks for having us on. Pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. So let's just start with this. I know you've been with the Alamo Bowl since its inception. The energy downtown during the Alamo Bowl is always incredible. There's always like a feeling in the air on the Riverwalk. So just talk to me about how you and your staff have built the event into what it is over the last 30 years.
Yeah, great question. I remember when I first got down here and saw the Riverwalk for the first time and said, "Oh, how great would it be to have barges with pep bands and teams and things going down the river, kind of our version of a parade." And they said, "That sounds great, but unfortunately, we drain the river that time of the year." We're like, what? No, we're bringing all these people to San Antonio. We got to showcase one of our best assets. So, lo and behold, we helped transform what used to be the slowest week of the year from a tourism perspective to one of the most robust. So it's fun. And what makes it so unique and different is that we've got a great city. We love to showcase it from that perspective. And we have a chance to make each and every year different. Different teams coming in, different fan bases. Even when we get teams that are, back to back, a lot of times players are different. So you do get to do a unique experience. So that makes it a lot of fun. And what better way to showcase our city than two teams and their colors, fan bases on the river, having a great time for a couple of days leading up to the Valero Alamo Bowl.
Of course. And this year, the game itself is going to be a great game, a top 15 showdown. It shouldn't be too hard to sell a game versus, number 12 versus number 14. But just tell folks, why they should show up for this game in particular. Any like intriguing storylines that you're watching as we head into the game?
Well, you certainly have, two teams that have dynamic offenses. While players are changing, coaches are changing from each team, and that happens every year. What used to be players opting out to go in the NFL, now you have teams experiencing transfers. Student athletes going from one team to another. So it's a different age from that perspective. But ultimately, people are fans of these two teams. OU and Arizona. OU took us 29 years to get them the first time in the bowl game, and now we've had them two of the last three. So it's exciting from that perspective, and their fans certainly can get here. Arizona, this is our second experience with them. But to be a top 15 team this year, won 6 straight team games down the stretch. Their young quarterback, Noah Fafita, is one of the most dynamic young quarterbacks in the country. And they've got a great receiving core as well. So I don't expect this to be a defensive struggle from that perspective, but that's okay. We try to script overtime if we could actually, dial one up from that perspective. But a lot of entertaining play, great players on the field, a great fan bases following their teams. And Arizona has not been to a bowl game in 6 or 7 years. So we expect a good following.
So let's follow up about the fan bases. Some years your Pac-12 representative is really a great team. I'm thinking about like a Washington or an Oregon, but just geographically, they're so far away. This year, you've got Arizona, who's really, not only like a regional neighbor to Texas, in the Southwest, but a really good Arizona team that's probably 3 or 4 possessions away in different games from being a playoff contender. So do you think this year you'll get a good travel base from your Pac-12 team, the Wildcats?
We'd expect it, and I think the other thing besides being, on the rise from that perspective, that obviously helps. But they're also moving into the Big 12 next year, so this kind of can serve as their springboard, ironically, from Pac-12 to Big 12. So kind of go from home to visitor, if you will, or vice versa in our bowl game. But it's a unique experience for them. They have, I think, they said maybe 5 to 8 players on the entire roster that have experienced a bowl game before, all of which are transfers coming in from other places. So that's going to be a unique experience. And I think we have a great opportunity to showcase what makes San Antonio so great and a chance to have, a fun experience. But at the end of the day, they are here for a football game. They do want to showcase their programs, both of them, to the state of Texas from a fan-based perspective, but also from a student-athlete perspective as well. Chance to come in here and do a little recruiting while they're at it.
One of the things I love most about the Alamo Bowl is that, you get to see which fan bases travel, which ones show up, which ones kind of take over the Riverwalk. And in that sense, I've never been more impressed with any team's fan base than I think it was 2018 Iowa State. They completely just dominated our downtown. I worked at the downtown HEB at the time, and we actually ran out of Busch Light because that's big up there. We had the Busch Light man signing autographs, taking selfies. They just completely took over our downtown. I wonder from that perspective, if, as the CEO of the Alamo Bowl, if there's any teams you just love to see in the game because you're just going to sit back and count money all week because they're going to buy tickets.
Well, it's a good question and a great point you brought up. Iowa State's a good example. We had not had them from that perspective, and it was one of those like trust us, and they were selling us as, on, hey, this is the biggest bowl game we've been to in X number of years. We're going to travel well. Literally, last person out, turn out the lights in the state of Iowa, and it was true. And the Bush Light campaign was fabulous from that perspective. And I still remember going to their own convention center pep rally that they did separate from us, invited their fan base there, and they had over 15,000 people at that event. So that just shows you how strong their fan base is and how well they traveled. Plus, leaving Ames, Iowa, to come down to San Antonio in late December, good reason to head south, right?
Oh, absolutely. I think that's right. I wanted to, kind of turn the conversation away from, those are kind of the fun parts of your job. Let's talk about maybe some of the things that might be keeping you up at night. Of course, the Pac-12 won't exist next year. Fans of the Alamo Bowl have come to expect basically a showdown between teams that are just outside the playoffs, usually a top 15 matchup. So looking for a new conference partner, how do you plan to maintain the standard y'all have built over the years?
Well, I think we'll have to see what happens with the Pac-12. We know obviously they're in the process of wrapping up their last season, and so we're kind of focused on that. They have a outstanding lawsuit, if you will, right now with the Pac-12 versus Pac-2, trying to determine governance going forward. But I think that the biggest message we can share with everybody at this point in time is, while we don't know the answer to the question ultimately, who will be playing next year opposite the Big 12, suffice to say there's tremendous interest in people playing in our game going forward, and I think we'll have a chance to have a very similar to match up to what we have now, and try to put together an equivalent type game as we go forward. So really the next 2 years going to be a little bit different anyway with the expanded playoff. Now you're going to have, in our case, you're on the Pac-12, and it's not just us, but there are 5 or 6 other bowl games that are impacted, as well as the CFP. And then all of us need to take a look and see what 26 and beyond looks like after the CFP resets at that point in time as well. So kind of a two-step process. What's 24 and 25 look like, and then 26 and beyond. And that's really when we may have a chance to even participate in the CFP level game, should we so desire as well.
And that segues perfectly into my next question because, when I think about the college football playoff, I think about how San Antonio has hosted some of the best Final Fours. I think Jim Nantz with CBS, on the broadcast last time said San Antonio is the best place to host a Final Four. We host conventions, conferences all the time. Our downtown tourism infrastructure is really unmatched compared to other big cities, or at least a lot of other big cities. So what's it going to take to get San Antonio in the Alamo Bowl and in that push for a college football playoff game?
Well, we've certainly raised our hand, right, from that perspective, let them know we're here. I think when you look at what the track record we've had as a community, you touched on the Final Four. We were just at an unveiling today for the logo for the Final Four in the future in 25. I think it's our fifth men's Final Four. And to your point, you talk to every media outlet, a lot of the fan bases, they love coming to San Antonio. The one thing we don't have is the shiny new toy right now compared to other cities, and that's a brand new facility. Not saying we need a new facility, but certainly to compete at the Final Four and CFP level, you've got to have a significantly upgraded facility than what we do today. Good news is, obviously, if you read what's going on in the paper here, then and shows like yours, the city of San Antonio is very forward thinking right now, thinking that we do have to invest in the Alamodome, the convention center, to stay relevant and competitive in the future. So I'm excited to see what that has in store. I know we kind of have some thoughts and ideas from that perspective of what it needs to look like, and hopefully we'll get into that in the first part of next year as well. Because to your point, for us to have a chance to move up and do things, we're going to have to be able to show the CFP what San Antonio looks like in the future.
And as I start to wrap this up, I'll drill down on that one just a little more. I have read those articles in the paper about the Alamodome possibly, making some money off these new taxation zones. But then you read the articles and sometimes it seems a little murky whether, the dome will actually be receiving those funds. I mean, do you know on your side, do you know that the Alamodome is actually going to benefit from these new funds that are proposed downtown?
Well, yes, and what the city is really put forward last week with Eric and the city council is basically the zone or district you're talking about is specific to the convention center and the Alamo Dome. Obviously, a lot of conjecture about a potential, new Spurs arena downtown, those type of things. These funds are not towards that at all. But I think it's also a matter of what do we need to be relevant going forward, not just from our bowl game, but as a city what does this facility look like to get major concerts, major conventions, major events and attractions? Same thing with the convention center. So that's kind of what the big question I think we're looking at. And then the ultimately is at what cost, right?
Absolutely. Well, y'all have done a pretty good job so far of staying relevant. Pretty good matchup every year. Energy unmatched downtown. So I will close with this question. At the end of the game, on both sides of the ball, you're going to have an MVP on offense and MVP on defense. You've done this. This will be your 31st year. So you've seen everybody. You've seen phenoms, Heisman, big men on campus, everything in between. If you could pick one player that would have be the MVP of all 30 years of the Alamo Bowl, who would you say that is that's shined the brightest under the lights of the Alamodome?
Wow, great question. Boy, LeVar Arrington on the defensive side, and even though we're a offensive game, certainly is a name that jumps out. TCU's comeback game. Bram Kohlhausen, a name a lot of people won't remember from that perspective as a backup and had his moment in the sun because the starting quarterback got in trouble the night before the game. So lots of interesting storylines that have been developed here. Obviously, having Coach Leach here several times was outstanding, and ironically, the game he was suspended for at Texas Tech is still our most highest watched game or most watched game in history. So, touch on a lot of different sides of the ball, offense, defense. So, not sure I can drill down to just one, but a lot of great games. You think about RG3 and that 67-56 defensive struggle we had with Washington and Baylor a few years ago. So, not many games I can recite the score, but that was one of them.
30 years of great moments, hopefully 30 more years to come. Well, thank you so much for joining the program. Derrick Fox, the president and CEO of the Valero Alamo Bowl. The Valero Alamo Bowl will happen 2 weeks from today. Number 12, Oklahoma versus number 14, Arizona. Derrick, thank you so much for joining the program.
Great. Thanks for having us and have a great day. Continued success.